Hello folks, welcome to today's show on OurGame.ie with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney. We're brought to you by OurStore.ie, which is the home for the official merchandise of OurGame.ie. Also, a couple of coaching clinics coming up very soon. We've got one in Kilworth, County Cork, that's on the morning of February 11th, Saturday, coming up very soon. Also, we've got a football one in Derrylock and Kevin Barry's up in Tyrone, Conor Gilligan, Conor Gormley, and we're going to have a third person announced very soon there. So really looking forward to those. You can get the link underneath the video, whether you're watching on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook. You can get the link there. So the tickets are available now. Michael, how are tricks?
All good, Shane. It's a perfect time of the year for a clinic, realistically, as well. There's so many people looking to soak up bits and pieces and learn bits and pieces before cracking on for the season ahead, no matter what grade it is. So, yeah, ideal. When I saw that there was a mystery third guest to be announced, I can't wait to see who the mystery third guest is. But mad busy weekend again, and sure, like the busiest, or I don't know if it's the busiest, but the biggest weekend in the club calendar coming up. Weird to have it at this stage. It was February last year, late January this year. I still kind of think like there's nearly too much going on at the moment for the club to be, front and centre. There didn't seem to be as much build up for the games maybe as there normally would, but we will ham it up as much as humanly possible today, and loads of matchups and different connotations and different things to go through in both games.
Yeah, sure, we absolutely love it. Look, as I said before, I wish this month was just totally like the Club All Ireland. Well, they'll move to before Christmas soon enough, so that's fine then. But just if it was college stuff and it was like January Madness, you know the way they say March Madness in the college basketball in America. If it was just January Madness and we had just so much college games all over TV and media and all that kind of stuff, I'd love that. But maybe it would be completely washed out by the coverage of soccer and so on. Hard to say, but great piece with Ryan Elliott yesterday. Shane worked with Ryan for a while, and a sounder man you couldn't meet. So he's the goalkeeper of Dunloy. We'll have clips from the interviews from players from all 4 finalists this weekend as the show goes on. If you want to see the full interviews, they're all up there on OurGame.ie. So don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, the whole lot. And as we keep trying to build the channel the whole time. What do you want as the first port of call today? We're going to get to the finals pretty soon and all the other pre-season competitions. But I suppose there's an interesting story in the Examiner about club players in Cork.
Yeah, lots of different bits of news. Listen, there's not an hour that goes by when there's not a bit of GA news of some description happening. And I think the bit of news in Cork is interesting. So club players in Cork will no longer be able to call on CCTV footage from Páirc Uí Chaoimh when contesting a red card they received at the venue, as a decision has now been made. They're not pointing the cameras towards the field of play anymore. I thought, like, had you heard of this happening that much, that CCTV footage was being used? You'd often hear of, match footage or recorded footage that the stats man or stats woman or whoever would be taken, but I hadn't heard too much of CCTV being used. But it obviously has been, if it's a rule that they've made to make sure that they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I'd imagine it really complicates the proceedings and the amount of extra work that has to go into, can somebody go through the old CCTV there and go and get the footage and all that kind of stuff. And I think there was 2 separate disciplinary hearings last year where it was where CCTV was provided. And Kevin O'Donovan, who's the Cork GA CEO, he was talking about this and he said it's not appropriate. And he goes, the cameras at Páirc Uí Chaoimh are being pointed in a direction now for their purpose, which is security, safety of patrons and so on. They were never put in there for hearings. They're not of a quality that would benefit hearings, in my opinion. But those cameras, in any case, will no longer be pointing in the right direction to support a hearing. We don't intend supplying CCTV from this point forward for the benefit of those requesting hearings, because it simply won't be pointing in the right direction. So that's how it is. Let us know what your people out there think in terms of, like, should this be used for it? Is it appropriate?
Is this another, the way like a lot of little loopholes and messing around appeals has been gotten rid of recently in the last couple of months, and they've kind of changed the process. The bans are now bigger as well, and you can't, like, you're not going to get off on like little technicalities, or you're less likely to. Is this kind of another part of that almost, where they're trying to take a lot of that messing out of the way?
Yeah, maybe so. But Joe, I'm seeing another story there based on, Grodo Go Crack On has put a comment in here. Vicky Wall being scouted by the Irish women's rugby team is an incredible story. Is there any Irish sports person in demand by so many sporting bodies? Now, Emma Duggan, I believe, her teammate, said yesterday that she's not going to be joining, and said, I briefly saw the report. The things that they latch onto, I can confirm Vicky's not going to play rugby.
Yeah, I actually interviewed her a couple of years ago, and I asked her what sport she played growing up, because to me, like, rugby would stand out as a sport that she might have had or that she could potentially excel at. And she had played some underage rugby. If you look at how much of a powerhouse she is at Gaelic, and then you look how, she took to the oval ball seamlessly over in Australia. And if you look at, previous, players that have played rugby for Ireland, am I right in saying Hannah Tyrrell have played a bit of rugby for Ireland? Yeah. So like there's a lot of players. Irish rugby is a funny one at the moment. There's a lot of players who, they hadn't been playing since they were 6 or 7 or something like that. There's a lot of players, even professionally or semi-professionally, that would have taken it up at 17 or 18 and would have excelled within a couple of years.
Emer Considine from Clare would have been one that went straight over. And like, even if you look at the Irish Gaelic football players that go over to the AFLW, you would imagine that the standard isn't as high over there if so many can go straight over from amateur GAA straight in and make an impact, because it's obviously not happening that quickly for men. That's not to say that there isn't a good standard, but comparatively, the men are struggling even, so it would just suggest that they're going in at a lower level.
Yeah, numbers wise, like if you look, was there 22 or 23 last year? At least half or more than half were getting regular game time and starring in games. Like off the top of your head, you're thinking Vicky Wall, Cora Staunton, Breed Stack, Orlo Dwyer. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of...
And some in advanced ages too. You think, it's supposed to be a young person's game, the amount of ground being covered, especially in the men's game. Some of the players are going over at an advanced age in terms of sport and making a big impact. So that would suggest that the level isn't quite as high comparatively with the men. Lads, she's bored playing rugby, no challenge to a player of her ability. She'd be bored, is what he's saying there. Is that true? I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure. I'm not the biggest rugby fan, but...
Yeah, I don't know. As regards the skill involved, I'm sure she loves kicking scores in the 2 codes that she is playing at the moment. And she'll obviously be playing for Meath again this year, which was a big reason of why she agreed to go over to Australia in the first place, that they obviously agreed. So they're going for 3 in a row, and while there was tears shed and it was the end of an era after they won the back-to-back, she'll be back on board again next year. And yeah, listen, there's probably no point in saying any different. Gaelic probably does challenge her a good bit more maybe than rugby would, I'd say, both physically and probably skillfully, technically, I'd say probably would challenge her a bit more. But it's amazing how in demand she is. And listen, it's only natural. If you look at her playing either of the 2 codes that we can see her playing now, you can see why she'd be in so demand at rugby.
I'm going to ask you about Offaly GAA and the naming rights of O'Connor Park in a second, but I don't know, did you see this last night? Man United were playing Crystal Palace, and during the middle of the game, a supporter came in and ran over to Casemiro and took a selfie with him. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that, no.
Yeah, I thought that was mental. I wonder if we're going to see that in the GAA soon enough. And then a few minutes later, Casemiro got himself booked, so he's going to miss the huge match with Arsenal on Sunday. I'm sure you don't know that much because you obviously don't follow soccer that closely.
Did he get booked as a result of the selfie?
No. Okay. Later on in the game.
And was it at the weekend where some crazy fan jumped in over the back of one of the terraces at the back and tried to hit the keeper a kick or something as well?
Oh, he did, and he connected with him too, yeah. And I believe the guy who's allegedly, the way you have to give it the old allegedly, is being called up for that now. 35 years of age, going in and throwing a boot at a goalkeeper just because he kissed his badge and went like that to the supporters who'd been slating him all game.
It's not mad though. Like, how are the fans getting this close? Like, it's crazy. Like, there's usually a lot of security.
Well, he walked all the way out to the Horden to pick up a water bottle, I think it was. So the guy just climbed over a few seats and jumped up on the Horden sign and swung his boot.
Okay. It's mad, isn't it though?
Yeah. Flash says Ray Dempsey's Limerick in the McGrath Cup final against Cork tomorrow. Limerick football is continuing to rise. It certainly is. So what do you make of Offaly GAA's, I suppose, the deals they've struck in recent days? Glen will take over the naming rights of O'Connor Park. And I think is it Galvin's of Tullamore is going to be on the sleeve now?
Yeah, so Glen obviously signed a big deal to be main sponsor, took over from Carol Cuisine, and now it's going to be Glen O'Connor Park, taking over from Bordemona, as you say, and they're going to have a secondary sponsor, Galvin's Menswear, which would have kitted out a lot of the lads for the Sunday game down through the years traditionally. They're going to be on the sleeve of the jersey. Listen, Shane, 4 or 5 years ago, we couldn't have dreamed of getting, having these sponsorship opportunities available to us, or people jumping up and down almost to give us money and to help out and fund things where possible. So it's to me, I sometimes you have to rub your eyes in disbelief at how things have turned around in such a short period. And I'm only talking about commercially, but those commercial deals, like what is all that money pumped back into? It's pumped back into all our development squads. It's pumped back into, how should we say, modernising the Faithful Fields even more, or putting more facilities in place there, money going back to clubs or whatever. That mightn't have a knock-on effect straight away, but it will have a knock-on effect in time. So to me, absolutely brilliant. And again, a couple of years ago, it's something we never could have envisaged happening. And it's the Shane Lowry effect as well. There's no point in saying any different. People are seeing him talking about Offaly, seeing him get involved with Offaly, and they're thinking, right, I could be Glen Isk, which is Offaly based, and Galvin's, which is Offaly based, and they'll get, want to give money. But then there's other people in America that have Offaly connections, all these different expats. It's just pulled in a serious amount of finances, and it pulled in a serious amount of goodwill as well.
And Michael Dignan, obviously a big part of that as well, done great work since going in as chairman. Very much a tongue-in-cheek comment here from Flatch. Offaly versus Limerick in Clash of the Cash. When?
Hey, we're a long way behind the cash that's flowing down around Shannon's side down there anyway. But geez, if we could get in anywhere close to that position, I'd be a happy man. It's amazing though. Like, I don't know if we've kind of chatted about this before. You see like the Saudi takeover with Newcastle and different teams. Like there are like is that slow? I'm not saying it's like, is that type of thing slowly creeping into the GA, where it says if you have a big benefactor, look like JP McManus, he's entitled to do whatever he wants with his money, and obviously Limerick is a passion of his, and he's pumping a lot of it back in. He's obviously not a resident of Ireland, so there's probably he's able to exploit maybe some tax kind of loopholes in that way as well. But like, they have a big benefactor there in him. Like, I can't think of too many more counties, really. A lot of other counties would have to go far and field, go to New York, or get different things from different people. But in time, will we see, like, if me or you were millionaires, which we probably never will be, but wouldn't you love to be pumping something back into your county, or, funding something? Shane Lowry's obviously one with us as well. So listen, maybe it is the Clash of the Cash in time. Maybe that will be the way it is in time.
Oh, money talks. I mean, like, look at all the biggest teams, the teams that tend to do best in GA in recent times. They all have money behind them. Now, maybe having success brings money towards you, and it's hard to put the chicken before the egg there. Like, so it was probably hard to initially get money into Offaly when things were going so poorly on the pitch. But whatever they've done it very well so far. Porrick Gray says, can you ask Verney what the majority of Offaly supporters would prefer to win, Liam or Sam?
That's a great question. I'm so far south, like, it's such a hurling focus. But when the boys won the under 20, like, we went as mad as anybody to the north of the county. And if you look at the geography of the Offaly senior hurling team now as well, you've guys from a lot further north than you ever would have had before. So I would still think it's probably a hurling over a football. To me, anyway, it would be. And maybe that's because the hurling has been more recent as well. It's obviously, 41 years since we won our last football title. I'm probably looking at that a bit, with a bit of rose-tinted glasses from, where I'm living. But to me, it would probably still be a hurling. I put it this way: the minor hurlers last year, I'm not saying they had more support than the under 20s. That's not the right thing to say. But I don't know. It
was more of a frenzied atmosphere, I would have said, because I was at the under 20 final against Roscommon. Although, was that behind closed doors at the time?
No, that was in Croker. It was opened. I think it was opened up a good bit at that time, and it was a standalone. Yeah. I think that was a standalone fixture that day as well.
Was it? Yeah. So if you're to judge it by the frenzied atmospheres at the minor games, and can you remind me again, who did Offaly play in that final?
Good man. What was the score? 117 to 116. I tell you something, At least losing that quiz, it's the one thing you're never going to forget now. That will be forever ingrained in your brain.
And the beard is starting to grow back now as well.
Yeah, it's coming back. All right. I'd probably just say marginally hurling, but again, that's probably a clouded judgment on my view. I think we take either now, to be honest.
Yeah, no doubt. Rory Jacob wants a penalty for any cynical fouls inside the 65. Obviously, former Wexford and Owlert the Bala hurler there. So I've said anywhere in the pitch. He's decided inside the 65. I think that's a step in the right direction. But I still think you'll have those cynical fouls inside inside your own 45. If a team is going to do a quick break and you can see right there on the front foot they need a goal, you'll still pull them down just further down the pitch. So for me, it's everywhere in the pitch. But still, I'm glad someone like Rory Jacob has even suggested the 65.
Well, you know, if you're saying anywhere in the pitch, at least it's getting closer to further down the pitch if we're able to bring in something like this. And as he said, like a lot of the time, you could, you know, when you're at a match and you can see it, like a lot of the time it is inside the 65 around the midfield where you can just see, whoa, he's after breaking a tackle here. This whole thing is opened up. Yeah. And then maybe someone comes in arms around. He also said he thinks it's an absolute joke that it's not in a club level, or that we have essentially, how many times has this happened in the GA where you have like a completely different rule, a fundamentally different rule at intercounty than you have at club level. So you have 2% of the GA population playing with one rule and 98% playing with no rule. And if you look at Conor Cooney's tackle against Dunloy, where he pulled down for a certain goal and they got away scot-free, he got a yellow card and the penalty was it saved, I think, by Gerard Kelly. If you look at some of Barry Coughlin's fouls, probably for Ballygunner as well, like, club players are exploiting the lack of a rule. And I'm not a fan of the black card. I don't like seeing players being put to the line no more than you do. But players will not do it if they're being punished on the scoreboard. If you pull someone down like that and there's a good chance of a goal, you will stop doing it, or it will be the very last resort.
Yeah, do you know what? And I think Rory Jacobs hinted at it, and you did the piece with him. But I think he hinted at there's no need for the black card if you have the penalty rule in for those fouls further out the field. And I'd be happy with that, because it means for a referee at all levels, they don't have to worry about timekeeping with black cards or anything like that. It's just penalty. Fair enough. If a team misses it, they miss it. That's your own fault. You should be converting a penalty. But I think that would, like, they do the foul to stop scoring. This would punish them, and it's the same in soccer. Like, if you have a penalty and you miss it, tough.
I'm after coming up with a mad idea, and I don't know if this has ever been discussed before, but just as you were talking there, you know, when a lad is fouled and he essentially has a free shot when he has the advantage, imagine if he put the free shot over the bar and still got free.
Do you remember recently against, was it Naas, when Owen Cody was soloing through and he had his arms up in the air, and I think the Naas players stopped because they were expecting the foul to come. The referee had the arm up for advantage. Everyone kind of stopped, and he smashed it into the net from around the 21. That's sort of oddity as well. That was the perfect example of you play to the whistle, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. The one I'm thinking of is, I don't know if there's a cynical foul along the way, but you still somehow you manage to evade the cynical foul and you get your shot away and you score. That you should have the score and a free, like you would have in basketball, like you're watching The Last Dance and you see Jordan make some crazy shot where he's totally blocked along the way and it goes in, and he has a free throw then after, and it's a total kill. I'm only just thinking off the top of my head. If there's a cynical foul. And then I suppose it'd be cynical foul. If you're going to take him down, make sure you take him down properly. Don't let him have the shot and the free.
The Mellons channel? Over recent years, a few big names, Pa Horgan and Damien Cahalane and more in Cork, have gotten red cards and subsequent one-game bans rescinded. Wonder, has the CCTV decision anything to do with that? I don't know, because that sounds like it's benefiting Cork, so I doubt it. And also,
I think he's more talking about within club games, though, isn't he? I'd imagine, like Patrick Horgan. Remember, he got that red card rescinded. Didn't he play a knockout game after, I think?
Yeah. Sorry, apologies to our commenter there. If you could clarify which games you're talking about, that would be good. PWell74, Fitzgibbon starting this week. I watched the 2018 final with UL, having Finn Hegarty, Tom Morrissey from Limerick, Kelly Fitzgerald Cleary from Clare, and Ford Heffernan McGrath from Tip. Some team was there better. Actually, we played UL in a challenge match around that time. I think it was probably January or February of 2018, probably January. And I remember in one of the games, Jason Ford got a ball out around, I think it was the 65 at the sideline, maybe his own 65. And I think he hit a free, crossfield free. And John McGrath rose up like a salmon, caught the ball and smashed it into the back of the net. It was class. And then also, Pat Ryan, he was playing corner forward. And he got a ball. And he shaped one way, went the other, went past both Darragh O'Connell and Oisin Goff, buried it into the net. I really enjoyed doing a Photoshop job after that, where I put the two boys photoshopped into a taxi with Pat Ryan standing beside it. So that was brilliantly done from Pat Ryan. Is CCTV some code word for brown envelope? I'm not sure what you mean there. WAT had some great teams down the years. They sure did. Probably regular players never get their bans rescinded. Not that often you hear about it. But then again, it doesn't make there isn't that wider interest, so it's probably not publicised as much if they do, is it?
No, probably not. No, just on the Fitzgibbon point of view, like that, that brilliant extra time Fitzgibbon final between Mary I and UL. Like I always said, the Fitzgibbon is the breeding ground of, you know, what's probably going to happen at intercounty. If you see a load of Limerick players thriving at Fitzgibbon level and a load of them playing at Fitzgibbon level as he would have at the time, that's a fair indication of what's going to happen at senior level in time as well. So that's why, at least from an Offaly point of view, we've, you know, a decent handful of lads playing Fitzgibbon this year. A couple of years ago, we mightn't have had anybody. Do you know what I mean? You have to be having lads, you know, duking it out and pitting themselves against lads at that level. It's such a great learning curve. And if you look at that 2018 final, look at the amount of them that have, you know, a bag of All-Ireland medals since. Load of Limerick lads have 4. Good handful of Tipperary lads have 1 from 2019 as well. It is a fair indication of what's going to happen and the players that are going to stand out at county level in time. And even like Cian Lynch going back to NUIG last year, like he would have been one of the first to win. Not one of the first, but he would have been in a select enough crew to win Fitzgibbons with different colleges as well. And so we know how that finished up. And he ended up getting his red card rescinded after, which was mad because he never should have been sent off in the first place. And it probably cost him the game in the wind-up. But go back to that 18 final, go back to the TJ and Joe Canning shootout. Joe Canning, who we're going to have live on the Monday show as well, which is going to be brilliant. Look at that shootout. Look at some of the great moments. Some of the great moments in hurling history have happened in the Fitzgibbon Cup, and I'm sure this year's competition will be the same.
Yeah, and even the Sigerson Cup final last year was quite good. I'd love to know what people think is the greatest Sigerson final that's ever taken place. Now, speaking of Sigerson and a man who played in the final last year, albeit the only final he didn't win, David Clifford, there's talk now of the Kerry County Council giving a full civic reception to David Clifford. And one councillor said, Argentina have Messi, but we have the Messiah. He's the greatest we have ever seen. I mean, considering David Clifford isn't exactly Mr. Social Media, and obviously he's done a few media appearances here and there, I'd say the thought of this would make him cringe, like reading a quote like that. I mean, cop on.
Listen, there's always someone locally, and God bless them, that will say something like this that catches the attention, probably because most people think it's a bit mad. Like, so I'm sure David Clifford will be taking a wide berth from that. And I'm sure the vast majority of the people that would be there for a potential civic reception have already got something signed or got a piece of them at some stage and in some game over the last 12 months, given the amount of people and particularly kids who he's and babies who he's probably signed and kissed and blessed over the last 12 months. So I'm hoping someone would see sense and just maybe knock that one on the head.
I mean, he's an unbelievable player. He has dragged them to this All-Ireland, but like, it's not like they've won 5 All-Irelands in a row here. And like, if he has his way and the rest of the team give him a platform, they probably will. But it just shows how carried away certain people can get with winning 1 All-Ireland. Now, Tipper, the Kings, have won in a row since the 60s. And it must be pointed out, Tip won 4 and 5 years in the 60s as well, just in case people forget, seeing as they love hammering us. But like, talk about getting carried away. I just think that's a little bit ludicrous.
It's always the one, because we always go back. Is it 64, 65 was the last time Tip done back-to-back? You know, the way you always remember certain dates because it just keeps happening over and over again where you're referring back to it. And it will keep happening until a team comes along and does back-to-back, and we'll forget about it then for a while.
Yeah, well, I think 2024, 2025 might be the time for Tipperary to do it. Tip have never won an All-Ireland in a year ending or in a, ending with 3. So
just forget about this year. This is a building year. Next year and the year after, that's the one that matters.
Are you writing us up?
I tell you what, if you're looking at the appropriate amount of time for those minors and 20s and 21s to come through, next year probably won't be far off, and hopefully you'll have Barry Heffernan back and you'll have Craig Morgan back and a few others back. But then saying that, on the other side of that, you'll have a load of legends potentially maybe out the door or hanging up their boots. So there's a bit of a balancing act there too.
Yeah. So the Kerry ladies, they're going to be wearing black shorts. Very difficult for you and I to comment too much on this, but I think it is for women to feel more comfortable on the field during that time of the month and so on and so forth. I'm trying to think about what's the best way for me to put it, but that's the way I've put it. I think if it makes people feel more comfortable, yes, absolutely, go with it.
Listen, Shane, that's a problem that we will never understand. There's no point in saying any different. And I've been thinking about before. I remember, is it what's the UK, the British tennis player. Is it
Emma
Emma?
Raducanu?
I think it was actually one before. Was there a Watson? Watson rings a bell to me anyway.
Yeah, was it Robson or Watson? No, you could be right.
Could have been Laura Robson, maybe. It was one of the British tennis players anyway there. I think had to pull out. It was the US Open a few years ago.
Robson, yeah.
Laura Robson, as a result of something like, you know, that sort of an issue. And, you know, it's mad to even have to think about and talk about here, but you're almost like timing your cycle around your sports calendar almost as well, and I can't imagine how difficult all that is. And so anything that makes things a bit easier, and like I know a lot of camogie players have talked about their disdain of the skirt as well, and just can't understand how female players just can't wear, you know, shorts the same as men's players. But slowly but surely things are becoming maybe more equal and the same. And listen, this is another advance that will help, no doubt, help a lot of women in Gaelic football, and hopefully other teams will follow suit.
Who's pushing the skirts anyway? Because it's like, who are in these admin roles that aren't making that change? Because like, there's obviously both men and women involved, but you'd imagine that in these meetings the men are like, nothing to do with me. Now maybe there's the odd person who is a voice against it, but I would have thought for the most part that the people that are running the show there, that they might also be women. And I could be wrong, but that would be my sense of it, and that they could change this quite quickly if they wanted to.
Yeah, you'd imagine it would be. It's just like Shane, or I'm not even sure if they've changed it since. Do you still have to have tape over the plates on your hurling in camogie? You had to up until a couple of years ago. I can't remember. Even the hand pass goal has changed in recent years. So listen, I don't know. Just anything, like, it seems a bit archaic to still have. It was a skirt, and it was, in, you know, a big awkward joke that'd be in the way. The skirt is probably a bit more convenient, but again, the closer they get to what players actually want, and listening to players will be a big help.
Yeah, and like when we were in school, it didn't matter what sort of pants we were wearing. You could go out and kick soccer or puck ball or whatever. Like, I've heard from girls that, like, you know, if you're in a school where you have to wear a massive billowy dress, that would stop you playing sports because you can't play it comfortably. So I think that sort of stuff should be thought about in terms of making sure the participation of sports is as high as possible for girls and obviously women, and like what they can wear to school, and, you know, the opportunity to even change into something that's more appropriate for sport is there. But anyway,
just make sport as easy and accessible as possible. Make it as easy to play as possible. That's basically it.
Yeah. Flash says Clifford definitely would prefer to be left on his own. He seems a shy enough lad when he's talking, probably been able to handle all the attention a bit better than Canning did. We'll ask Joe about that on Monday. Clare had no footballers playing Sigerson for years, a lot more now playing, particularly with UL, and no coincidence that they've been in Division 2 for 8 years. Emmett McMahon, captain for UL the last day. Okay, next item that we want to talk about is, as you said, we've Joe Canning on the show on Monday, previewing the Laker Gale. He's the first one up next week. There's also going to be Aidan O'Mahony, who just capped off his career with an All-Ireland intermediate club title with Rathmore last week. Anne Dalton, Tom Parsons, Anya Wall, Liam Sheedy, Anthony Malloy and Noel O'Leary. So that's going to start next Thursday, like we said. Munster GA Chairman Jerry Ryan believes the GA risks burnout for some of its top young players if the association reverts back to under 18 as its intercounty minor grade, while at the same time permitting players in their 18th year to play adult hurling. Like, I agree that both should not happen. We can't be holding up we can't be holding up club games over one lad who's playing in minor. And like any club that says, well, look, we need it to field, just ask the 35-year-old to play on for another year, I would have said. Or, you know, and I know it's tough, you can't always do that, but, you know, something has to give. There will be someone who'll be put out somewhere, but you can't hold up the vast majority just over a little edge case here and there.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because if you talk to real rural clubs who are really struggling for numbers, and the impact that you know, a potential county minor would make to their first adult team or whatever is probably huge. You can't have. The one thing about the minor going to under 17 was at least there was no championships been held up by, you know, a panel member or an extended panel member of a county squad or anything like that. At least things that was completely separate. So it's kind of a difficult one. I do think a lot of rural clubs would struggle maybe without their one or their two players. For example, just say if you know, the Offaly minors from last year were the backbone by Kilcormac Kalati players. But let's just say three of them were with, you know, an intermediate team who would love to have them, but they can't have them, you know. So, and they're really struggling for numbers. And, you know, the 35-year-old or the 36-year-old is, you know, living up in Donegal now, or has to commute from somewhere. So you know, in most cases you're saying, yeah, it'd be great if we could have the championship, you know, go on without them and let them get to a certain age before they play. But there will be a certain few exceptions to the rule, and definitely rural clubs are the ones that probably suffer in that regard.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's keep going anyway and get your comments in and let us know if you think we're right or wrong. Former Kilkenny minor hurler captain, actually, Dara Joyce, he's moving closer to a return to the AFL after the Brisbane Lions confirmed they'd received approval to train with the club. He joined Dubliner James Madden and Tyrone All-Ireland winner Conor McKenna. Remember, Madden came back last year for Ballyboden and played in the county semi-final against Nafina. They were beaten that day. Fitzgibbon Cup, there's a bit like that's up and running at the moment. NUIG beat MTU Cork 221 to 216. Evan Nyland hit 111. That was 4 frees in the middle of that. He must be up there now with the top scorer in the history of the competition, because it feels like he's definitely played in the Sigerson for a number of years now.
Yeah, the Fitzgibbon, yeah, he's played a lot, and most days he's put up a big score as well. That was obviously like 221 to 216 is fair out shooting for this time of the year. Just fly down through the scores there really quickly. Nyland at 111, 1-7 from play. Greg Thomas with 1-1. Niall Collins with 3 points. They were the key scorers there. Oisin Flannery chipped in with 2 actually. Tiernan Killeen too. There's plenty of talent in that use. Yeah, I think it's University of Galway now, not NUIG as we would have called it back in the day. And it used to be UCG. So since me and you were in college back in there, in around there, college names have changed 2 or 3 times. I will still always call University of Galway NUIG. It will always be LIT. It will always be DIT. It will even be Bolton Street in some ways. You know what I mean? So like, you'd always say the old LIT or whatever it used to be called, because some of them have such convoluted names now that it's hard to keep up.
I'm sure back in our days it was the Intercert rather than the Junior Cert. Did it still call it the Junior Cert? I don't even know anymore.
No, it is still the Junior Cert. Yeah. When that changes and we're gone from the Intercert to the Junior Cert to something else, we'll know we're probably knocking on in years even more than we are.
Yeah, and I see you called out Tiernan Killeen getting a score there for the Galway College, and he was playing at the weekend as well, also for Galway. So for some of these lads, it's a very, very busy period. SETU Carlow drew with Mary I 116 apiece there. So that was a late free from Chris Nolan, earned their side a point. Now let's preview the All-Ireland Club Championship. Will we start off with a little video or two?
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll start off with Joey Holden previewing the All-Ireland. About the semi-final then against Ballygunner. It was a cracking game for long spells, but you did seem to hold them at arm's length later on in the game, so it was very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a tough game. I suppose looking back at it, they maybe missed a couple of scores at the end of the first half, started the second, and then we maybe got the grips. But it was nip and tuck. I thought a lot of the time you could look back further and say we missed scores here and there. So that was kind of the overall part of the game, that we missed goal chances, they missed a few scores. Just goes to show there wasn't a whole lot in it. But I think we performed well as a team, and I suppose just gave it everything that we had. We tactically got things fairly right, and it just goes to show when you do prepare well that these things will stand to you. So we'll have to bring that next Sunday. But for that game, certainly, not that we knew what to expect, but we knew if we hang in there that we have quality forwards that can get scores. And although they missed a couple of goals, they had great opportunities in creating them chances, but they worked fierce hard as well to limit the ball that was coming into the backs.
And I suppose it was the closest thing to a 60-minute performance that you've had recently, considering Naas. It was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde performance, and the same against Crokes.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Against Naas, the first half wasn't great. We performed well in the second half. Against Kilmacud, it was fairly obvious. But I suppose looking back at the Kilmacud game, I thought the first half maybe flattered us, and then we got 3 scores straight after half time, and it was a lesson that maybe we switched off and thought, yeah, let's concentrate in the semi-final. But just show like the quality of Leinster teams as well, that when you switch off, these teams can just take over, and suddenly it's hard to stop them getting the ball. We couldn't get on any ball. So, but yeah, we learned lessons from that, and we tried to say, right, let's put 60-minute performance together. That's what we'll try to do next weekend. But we can't just think because we put 60-minute performance together that it'll happen the next day. It doesn't happen. You have to make it happen.
Yeah, and so say all of us. They were very good against Ballygunner in the semi-final. I actually thought during that game that Ballygunner were waiting to come, and then just as the second half wore on, it was just like the reality came in that, you know what, Ballyhale are going to win this.
Yeah, and just when Joy was talking there, like, Shane, Jesus, they could have had 6 goals in that semi-final. Like, thinking about the goal chance, and you're thinking from a Dunloy point of view, and we'll go in and preview the game a bit more now in a minute. But like, if Ballyhale gets, like, that's not going to happen 2 days in a row. If Ballyhale get 5 or 6 clear-cut goal chances, it's going to be 4 to 5 goals. There's no point in saying any different. And like, the scoreline flattered Ballygunner at the end. The more you think of it, really. And barring one of the best goalkeeping performances that we've ever seen from Stephen O'Keefe, Ballyhale would have been completely out of sight. And again, this could have easily been, 4-16 to 16 points. And it was only 3 points at the end. But like, I don't expect that to happen the next day. And, is the Dunloy defence as good as the Ballygunner defence? Will they concede more chances? They're fairly well warned anyway of what's going to be coming down the tracks, and that they're just going to put the head down and they're going to go for goals and they're going to go for your throat from the very start. And I think we'll talk about, the whole David versus Goliath element to it. Like, if Ballyhale get that sense at the start, and if they hit a goal or two, like, I put it this way, can you remember the last time, a rare and underdog won a game after a bad start? Like, you have to, they're going to have to just hang in there. Not saying, they're going to throw everything they can at Ballyhale, but like, they cannot wait to see what Ballyhale have. If they wait to see what Ballyhale have, or whether it's a go on day, or whether they're, as up for it as they were for Ballygunner, the game will be over. They're going to have to start and be in this game after 15 to 20 minutes.
Well, they're going to have to do what Naas did, which is get in front early and go for the jugular. And the only thing with Naas is that they left an awful lot of scores behind them, even when they had gotten themselves into a nice little lead. You mentioned the goalkeeping performance of Stephen O'Keefe the last day. I was speaking with Ryan Elliott, who'll be standing under the black spot at Croke Park against Ballyhale Shamrocks this weekend. Here's what he had to say. Excitement like locally heading into this final against Ballyhale?
There's some buzz about Sheehan at the minute in the village, so there is. Everyone you're talking to is talking about the match, and the whole village is grinning gold at the minute. The buzz it's exciting.
So what do you know of the previous finals? Dunloy have been here 4 times before. And I know your dad played in goals as well in 95 and 96, your dad Shane. What do you know of the history of Dunloy in All-Irelands?
I suppose we have a good history in the competition getting to finals, and I can't really remember. I wouldn't have been born in 95 and 96, but I can't really remember the 03-04 finals too much, just from watching back clips and that of it. But yeah, they were super teams we had back in them days, so they were.
Yeah, and how much of an influence on you becoming a goalkeeper was your dad being a goalie, or was it like you show up at training, they don't have anyone to go on goals, they're like, well, his father was a goalie, we better put him in?
I think that was the case. It was under 16, and the minor manager at the time was Gary Kane, and he wanted me to do nets for the minors because they didn't have enough players. So I think it was just who my father was I got put in there, but it kind of stuck from there.
Yeah, and were you sickened with it at first, or did you embrace it straight away?
No, it was one of them things. I just got on with it, and I was happy enough doing it, and happy enough doing it now.
And so what sort of tips would your dad give you, or would he kind of let you off to do your own thing?
I think he's good at that way. He kind of lets me do my own thing. I think he knows the crack we're playing before, so no, he lets me off.
Yeah, so you can see the rest of that interview at OurGame.ie there. He's a great chat with Ryan Elliott. Seems a very nice fella, and best of luck to him in the final. We'll bring out the tactics board in a little while. And if people want to suggest what they think the big matchups are going to be, let us know. But Johnny Murphy is going to be the man in the middle for this game, the Limerick man. From Ballyhale's point of view, like they're massive favourites. There's no two ways about it. But they do have injury concerns over Darren Mullen, who obviously came back who came off in the semi-final early doors, but I believe he might be okay. Joey Cuddihy also came off. We've heard, both you and I separately have heard talk that maybe Adrian Mullen is carrying a knock. That would be a huge blow because I now see him as the engine around the field. But they're looking for a 9th Club All-Ireland title, which is quite ridiculous.
Yeah, no, you pulled out a nice little stat there, Shane, about, I think there's 4
players from Ballyhale, you might go into it there. I think this is kind of bamboozling, really. And to me, if you're a Dunloy manager, you don't want to be hearing stats like this and things like this on the eve of the final, because it just shows you what you're coming up against.
Yeah, so like Ballyhale won their first, Shamrocks as they like to be called, won their first All-Ireland title in 1981. So they've won 8 at this stage. The next highest the next team in the Roll of Honour is jointly Burr and Portumna with 4 each. There's 4 Ballyhale Shamrocks players that have more All-Ireland titles in the bag already than Burr and Portumna. So the only team with more All-Irelands than them is their own club. TJ and Owen Reid, they have 5 All-Ireland club titles, and the same with Colin and Michael Fennelly. So 3 of those 4 lads are looking to get their 6th All-Ireland club title. It's nuts when you put it that way.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know for the Offaly Football Championship, Alan McNamee is 3rd in the Roll of Honour by himself with 13 titles, and then Tullamore ahead of him, then Roder number 1. But this is outrageous, really. And as you said, 3 of them, a trio going for a 6th All-Ireland crown. And Shane as well, like, you have to think about, if COVID hadn't existed in 2020 and Harry Rudden hadn't scored a goal, like, they could be going for 5 in a row. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've only been beaten once since Henry Shefflin took over in a meaningful knockout championship game. They've been beaten once, and that was with a goal in the last minute. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's nuts when you look at it.
That's the size of the task facing Dunloy. And, we were talking about it beforehand. So when, like, they've lost 4 All-Ireland club titles before, which means that they've obviously won 4 All-Ireland club semi-finals, not including the one recently enough against St. Thomas's, where they were brilliant. But have they ever come out of an Ulster club championship and been favoured in an All-Ireland club championship game, whether it's an All-Ireland semi-final or final? Because I think, rightly or wrongly, and I suppose the stats over the year would say rightly, Ulster teams generally come in as underdogs. So I would imagine this is no different to any other game where they've played. They are underdogs.
Yeah, I think they have I think Ulster teams have a 15% strike rate in All-Ireland semi-finals. And obviously, that's Dunloy 5 times, definitely Lochiel twice, maybe more. O'Donovan Rossa were in a final as well. But just going back to the 5 semi-finals that they have won. So they beat Athenry in 95, big underdogs. Glenmore in 96, Mount Sion in 03, Portumna in 04, and Thomas's earlier on this year. And an interesting one as well, Gregory O'Kane, who's their manager. Dunloy have won 16 county titles since 1990. That 1990 was their first. And he has been involved in every county title win, either as a player or as a coach or as a manager. He's been involved in every Ulster success, every All-Ireland semi-final win, and every All-Ireland final that they've been in. It's remarkable, really. But something you said there, aside from their first All-Ireland final appearance when they played Burr in that drawn game, it finished 9-9 Patrick's Day in 95, and we were pox to get a result. Dottie Regan got free, or not free, he hit a long ranger at the end in thunder and lightning. We were blessed to get a result. We won comprehensively the second day, but they probably underperformed in 96 against 6 Mile Bridge. They underperformed in 02 against us again. They underperformed in 03 against us. They underperformed in 04 against Newtown. And I think the big, and they were nearly all double-digit losses. Like, it doesn't get much easier on Sunday, but I think they'll want to, like, if they're able to give one of those semi-final winning performances in a final, then if they don't win, they don't win. But they will be disappointed with how they've performed in the finals outside of that first one.
I presume you were too young to remember it, but that time after the drawn game against Burr, going into the replay, was everyone saying they'd missed their chance and Burr were still overwhelming favourites, or were people tipping Dunloy at the time?
No, I think Burr were still favourites. I actually didn't get to go to the replay because it clashed with, I'm going to say, like, my sister's confirmation or my sister's communion, one or the other.
Maybe one of those Energizer discos. You were going to have to get the shift.
But what was I going to say to you? A couple of I remember one of the Hanafis got their confirmation or communion somewhere else that day to make sure they could go to the game. I remember it was a big conflict around town. But the contrast between Patrick's Day in 1995, it was thunder and lightning, woeful weather. When they played in the replay, it was literally the nicest day of the year. Paul Murphy got 2 goals, and I think we hit 3-13 the same day, and the game was over by half time. And I don't know whether that had a knock-on effect on some of their All-Ireland final performances since, but they haven't delivered their best since anyway. Definitely not.
We'll go through some of the comments here. Porrick Grace says Ballyhale will go for the jugular early. Could be won in the first 10 minutes. Would love to see Dunloy win in All-Ireland. Would deserve it, being a fine club down the years. Mikey Doyle says, I would give Dunloy a chance. They're not as bad as people think. I certainly think we're going to be looking at the positives.
We don't think they're bad anyway. Definitely not.
Certainly not. Porrick Grace adds again, they're a fine team. If they were in Kilkenny, I would predict they'd be the second best team or thereabouts. Ballyhale are special. Porter, I hope Dunloy do well, but they're playing the best club team since Portumna. Porrick Grace again, St. Thomas has looked overconfident when saying that. The scoreline flattered the Galway lads. Be worried about Dunloy and the physical stakes, although St. Thomas's are a big team and it didn't affect Dunloy. A Sully 180 was in the Nally the day of the first game. Atrocious conditions.
Yeah, it was gas. It was brutal the same day. It was absolutely brutal. I'm only kind of thinking as well, Shane, like, where would this rank in terms of, you know, upsets? I don't think this is an upset. I think I'm actually doing a piece for the paper on Saturday where I'm talking about like how to make a miracle happen almost. Like, what's the ingredients to, and like Mullinachta would definitely be one, and it was obviously known as the miracle of Mullinachta. Other club games we were kind of chatting beforehand, I think Kilcormac were like 4-1, 9-2 when they played Thurles in that All-Ireland semi-final in 2012. What other ones would spring out to you? Because they're like 13-2 outsiders. But the only thing I'd say to you as well is they were outsiders against Stockneal in the Ulster final. They're outsiders against Thomas's. It's not a big departure for them. It shouldn't affect their psyche. And as Ryan Elliott said yesterday to the media as well, and he probably said it to yourself, they're always underdogs. Ulster teams are nearly always categorized as underdogs. But what are the other great upsets that you can think of? Because this would be right up there.
You'd have to talk about Mount Leinster Rangers against Oulers. And within the camp, the same as any time that there's a shock here, within the camp, there would have been belief. Maybe not everybody, but you would have had enough people believe it. Like the time that Mount Leinster won that, the outpouring of joy. And sometimes it's that outpouring of joy that lets you know that this was a shock. We were mentioning St. Mullins beating Cool at that time, albeit the injuries that we had on the day, which I don't like bringing up.
And you weren't playing.
Well, no, I'd say more so Khan, Ushingoff and Cullum Cronin. They might have had something to do with it. I suppose those would be the ones that would stick out to me. If people have any comments, let us know of other teams. Lochgiel were 3-1 to beat Coolderry in 2012. Yeah, I'd forgotten that they were fair outsiders that day. Let's
at county level, Shane, just really quickly, because I was chatting to Rory Jacob. Wexford beating Kilkenny in 2004 was massive. Like massive one. Donegal were 7 or 8-1 to beat the Dubs in 2014.
It was huge, huge.
And I know they had a few quid on themselves. But it has to be, and even just chatting about the psyche, this is not a thing where you can switch on something on a day. Like, this has to be almost ingrained in you over a time. So I was chatting to Gary Rogers from Mullinachta, and he was saying, you know, that was our third time in Leinster, I think he was saying. And it's like we built up a belief over time that we could fight it out with anyone in Leinster. It didn't just happen on the day. We didn't just deliver a performance. We did deliver a performance, but it built up over time. If you look at Dunloy, Schlockneil have been beating them for the last couple of years. This is something, they've loads of experience at provincial level. They've good experience on Ireland level traditionally. So this is kind of built up over time. And even chatting Rory Jacob about Wexford had ran Kilkenny to within 2 points 2 years before that. So the belief element there, it shouldn't be for a lack of belief anyway, from a Dunloy point of view anyway.
Yeah, Lochgiel against Na Piarsaigh, that was also that was 2012, wasn't it? That was a game in Parnell Park that went extra time. I remember we'd been playing a challenge match in Moneygall the same day, and we went into the Ollie Hayes' pub, you know, the man who served up to Barack Obama. That was probably about a year after Obama was down there. Anyway, and we were watching that game on TV. It was a cracker. So let's look at some of the matchups that will happen. Now, maybe it won't pan out exactly like this. Maybe Darren Mullen won't be playing. Maybe Adrian Mullen will be injured. And obviously, we've also mentioned Joey Cuddihy. But there's probably a certain amount of matchups. And number one thing to mention is, will Paul Shields be playing in midfield? For who? Wouldn't be entirely sure. But when he came on against St. Thomas's, he had such a steadying influence. And I'd say it was a huge reason that they got over the line, even though a lot of people played really well. But Keelan Malloy, he'll probably spend time out midfield and I suppose going out anywhere where there's space so he can turn and run at his man. He has to ensure that Richie Reid has a few conundrums throughout this game, because if Reid ends up getting more possessions than anyone else on the field, that will be a fair sign that the pressure is going on the Dunloy backs. They're smashing the ball up the field and Richie Reid's going to town.
Yeah, there's nothing surer than Evan Shefflin, Richie Reid. and Dara Corcoran are going to try and hold their ground as much as possible. You have them quite close to Conal Cunning, Sean Elliott, and that's where they'll want to be. If you pull them up around the 65 and around midfield, that's where Dunloy will be trying to create that bit of space. They'll be trying to pull them out of position. Say particularly Keelan Malloy will be given a license to roam as far out there as possible and try and pull Reid away from there. If he obviously is coming out that far, that clogs up the middle a bit. Richie Reid will probably sit back. They have to be really aware of. And I thought they were pretty good at it, I thought, in the Thomas's game. Some of the diagonal ball that went in totally negated the sweeper at times. David Burke was taken out of the game at times, and I know that somebody else in there at different stages as well. But they're going to have to be so clever with that ball in. But Keelan Malloy is going to have to ask. He's not going to be there the whole time, but he's going to have to ask Richie Reid an awful lot of questions. He's going to have to try and make him uncomfortable. It's funny, I was chatting to Rory Jacob about that Wexford game in 04, and he said they tried to do something different maybe that they'd never done before. And he thought it was gas looking back on it. Barry Lambert was wing forward and Paul Carley was the other wing. And their sole instruction was that when Damien Fitzhenry was starting his run up for the puck out, they just looked at him and they just sprinted to the opposite side of the field as fast as they possibly could. And he said Brian Hogan was one wing and Sean Dowling were the other, and they followed them. And it created space, and Fitzhenry hit grass. And he said, it's so naive of a tactic, but it was just different and they'd never really seen it before and it worked. And then he said, we played Offaly in the Leinster final and it didn't work at all. But they tried something different on the day and it worked. And it'd be interesting to see if Dunloy are able to try, what will they try to take Ballyhale out of their comfort zone. But they're you know, those big players up front, Keelan Malloy, Sean Elliott, Conal Cunning, they're going to have to get on the ball. Like Dunloy were struggling in the semi-final at stages. Thought Keane Matney did a decent job on Cunning for maybe the first 40 minutes. Then I thought the quality of ball going in was so much better that no cornerback was really going to be able to deal with it. And we're talking about matchups and things. Like, is Joey Holden on Conal Cunning a realistic matchup, I'd say, given the job that he did on Desi Hutchinson when Hutchinson was in there last day in the semi-final?
Yeah, I think that's a definite matchup that's going to happen. ML89 says, Dunloy losing their 5th All-Ireland will bring them level with Rathnure as the club with the most final losses. A bit of an unwanted history. Flash drives the boot in saying, heading for Mayo territory there. Crazy how dominant a side like Ballyhale are for a club. It took an absolute wonder goal at the death to beat them. Mike Doyle says, Shane Michael, if you were Dunloy's manager, any particular tactic you would try or target? So one that I'd be interested in is seeing like Nigel Elliott. He was so good the last day. Will they try and isolate him in space with Evan Shefflin? Like, Evan Shefflin's an excellent hurler, and especially when he's going forward on the ball. But if he's been run at like any back, really, you are that little bit susceptible. I think Keelan Malloy could end up going over on one of the wings as well, maybe run at Dara Corcoran or Shefflin. Again, you kind of want 5 or 6 Keelan Malloys and just have players running at, obviously running through. But like, can they leave Richie Reid free? Would they consider just moving Smith in and just tell him, look, just get in there close to Richie Reid, more or less mark him from the front. And if that means leaving the likes of Killian Corcoran free to be the spare man, let them do that. So I think you wouldn't always do it, but I think this is a situation where you would man-mark one of the defenders. Sorry, you would man-mark him. Now, maybe if Darren Mullen ended up being the spare man, you know, that's going to obviously be someone who can do a lot of damage from the back for Ballyhale also. But I think that would probably be a tactic I'd go with. What would you think? Do you think that could go awry, or do you think you could get some joy out of that?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. If you're going to leave somebody free, you want to leave somebody who's going to be not necessarily uncomfortable, but less comfortable. Like, if Richie Reid is free, you've got one of the best ball strikers on the field dictating affairs, and the ball is probably going to land to him quite a bit. He's going to be an outlet, and short puck outs will be hit to him and different things. So it's really difficult from a forward, and I've never actually really played the role in the forwards. I don't know whether you have, where you're actually where you're marking somebody and you're trying to juggle, and just say they realise what's going on after 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden Darren Mullen is free, and you just say, I'm not picking on Killian Corcoran or whoever it is, but you've been told to leave a specific player free. Very funny, actually. We played Belmont a couple of years ago, and my cousin was playing cornerback for them, and I don't even know if it was a pre-arranged tactic or what. I can't even remember. But he was left free a lot of the time, and they beat us by a point, and he comes over to me after, he was laughing. He says, "Jeez, you don't think much of me anyway, leaving me free the whole time." I was kind of laughing about it, but like, you need to kind of turn that into a positive. You need to, if a team has targeted a particular player and thinks they're not comfortable on the ball, either they need to really revel in that role, or they need to get somebody else into that role. But that's definitely something, and keeping them thinking. And if Darren Mullen is switched, you're switching over on him. If you want to keep a certain player free, and at least you want to keep them thinking, and that they don't have the whole puzzle fixed before they go out or after a couple of minutes. You want to be throwing lots of different curveballs at them to keep them on their toes, and just try and take them out of their stride. But listen, I'm sure Ballygunner were trying several different things in the semi-final that we mightn't even know about, and Ballyhale just took everything in their stride and dictated affairs. And that's the thing. It's so difficult to impose your tactics on a game, even after 5 or 6 minutes, if the opposition is, on the front foot, chest out, and are driving forward everywhere, and they're all on their game.
Yeah, I had to do that role once. I was playing full forward and I was told to come out and just basically stop the sweeper for Kilmacud. I think this was in the 2017 county final, because Ross O'Carroll was getting on an awful lot of ball. So I went out and he was basically not the sweeper then. And the guy who did become the sweeper made a few mistakes on the ball. So it definitely does make a difference. And if you could stop Richie Reid taking over the game, it's not an easy thing to do. And I feel like I'm about to be sneered here, but it was effective.
No, I'm just thinking you always hear it, like you're leaving a cornerback free who you don't think is comfortable on the ball. He doesn't want it. That's all you'd hear. And you're trying to ramp it up almost. And if he, takes a bad touch on a ball, you're all over him, and lads are in his face. He doesn't want it, louder and louder, and you're ramping up the pressure. Whereas, particularly if it's a rookie player that maybe hasn't played in an All-Ireland final, and that's probably why we've mentioned Cillian Corcoran, and he's a fine player, by the way, and could blow that notion or thought completely out of the water. But you just want to put someone in an uncomfortable position, maybe who doesn't have as much experience. Leave Richie Reid free, and he'll kill you. There's no point in saying any different. Leave him free, and he'll deliver all sorts of ball into the forwards and just completely dictate things.
Yeah, I mean, Kilkenny over the years, they put Shefflin on whoever was the rookie. I mean, it would be naive of Dunloy to not target the younger guy who's still playing for Kieran's, and leave him free for all the puckouts and man mark basically everyone else who's really comfortable on the ball. It would be naive not to do that. So I think but the problem then is if they go long on top of Adrian Mullen or Owen Cody, or if TJ Reid and Colin Fennelly come out, you've got other problems anyway. I wouldn't be surprised, and no more than yourself, if TJ Reid and Colin Fennelly start inside a nice bit. Obviously, try to drag out the centre back and pump long ball in. Even if you do have a centre back in there as well, and you put 2v3, I think Ballyhale would fancy their chances of getting enough breaks, especially with the other runners they have coming in off it. Look, there's no point in trying to say it any other way. It's very hard to make a case for Ballyhale Shamrocks not winning this game.
Yeah, and I think the question that was asked about, are there any particular tactics that you would do? I don't think you can bamboozle a team as well. I think you have a couple of, foundations that you go with, or particular matchups you go with on a given day, but you really have to have a fair degree of trust in your own performance. There can't be a load of caveats on, you're definitely marking TJ, you're doing this, and like TJ goes out midfield and all of a sudden the cornerback is playing midfield or a full, do you know what I mean? A lot of it does have to be based on what we do well and trying to make sure that we do that as best as possible, with a couple of little tweaks of maybe players that you're going to go after or whatever. And I don't know about you, but if there's a definite matchup that you're looking at, sometimes I wouldn't make it too obvious. If TJ starts centre back and you're to be picking him up, you'd let the centre back maybe pick him up for the first couple of minutes, and then you go out on him, and then it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's not as big of a deal then almost as well. You kind of probably take lads in their position, whereas if you go run to a lad straight away, kind of you're almost like, I don't know, maybe they're just thinking there's maybe an added pressure on yourself there as well. But it's going to be fascinating to see, can they bring what they brought against Thomas's? If they bring what they brought against Thomas's and they convert what they didn't convert in the first half, they'll give themselves a chance. But they're going to have to start so well, because you're not going to come from behind against Ballyhale. You're going to have to be neck and neck with them after 15 or 20 minutes. If they hit a couple of early goals, I'd be surprised if it wasn't lights out.
Yeah, you just don't want a repeat of what happened to Clock Ballacalla a couple of years ago. I mean, even if you do concede a goal or two here and there, just stay calm. Don't try and force goals. Just keep trying to pop over the points. If a goal comes, fair enough, take it. From what I hear, Shamrocks have 10 on the Kilkenny panel outside of Holden, and Fenley says hurling 1, 2, 3, 4. That's enough said. Yeah, you would hear reports of that. Some backs are more comfortable hanging off the forward and never touching the ball, and he doesn't want to be free. If he gets the ball, he'll just turn and lash it down the field. Which Ballyhale will you get? The 60-minute team that played Ballygunner, or the team that was blowing hot and cold before that? John Collins, Johnny Crowley, 1986 All-Ireland final. PJ Malloy played third midfielder. Johnny won man of the match. So I can't remember what that relates to what we were talking about earlier on, but keep the comments coming in anyway. Is there anything else we want to talk about on this? Get your comments in and let us know who you think will win.
No, like, it's just so many things are going to have to go right for Dunloy realistically, and not been in any way disingenuous to him, but a Ballyhale team in 3rd/4th gear will win this game. If they hit 5th or 6th, they potentially could steamroll them. But I think we're just hoping that Dunloy can impose themselves like they did on Schlockneil and like they did on Thomas. And he said, causing a big upset is, they've done it before. They've been, big underdogs in 5 All-Ireland semi-finals, including the one against Thomas's, big underdogs against Schlockneil. Can they do it again? That's the big one.
Yeah, John Collins just clarifying that's about leaving the cornerback free. I just mean now for the puckouts, but fair enough point all the same.
Just on that as well, it's gone, but it has moved on some amount from the bogey cornerback who's just pulling a jersey. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you don't really, at real elite club, you don't have a lad who's just pulling a jersey and can't, do 20 or 30 yard accurate stick passes out, can't build the play. That's the way the game has gone now, even at club level. What's you don't call it a bogey. What's the word you use? No, that's way too strong. There's always there's a word you use anyway for if a team is carrying someone. It's not a weak link. I forget what it is, but you'll probably say it at some stage during the show, and I'll bring it back then.
Yeah, do you know, actually, I put something up on the Twitter during the week in terms of, like, what's a term you have in your county that no other county has? And there was a lot of good ones, like, leaving good and ignorant, like you'd say, or someone from Cork was saying about send it, which basically means drive the ball in as well. So let us know if there's any comments that we missed. Well, we're going to talk about the Munster Hurling League final. And funny enough, so Tipperary are in it. And as I love to say, Tipper back, obviously, because they're in a pre-season competition final against Cork. But funnily enough, the father sent me an article today that I wrote in the Star in 2014. And the only reason I'm going to bring it up on screen here is this was Tipperary batter in Dublin in the All-Ireland quarter-final, after labouring for a lot of the season. But the opening sentence is, Tipperary might not yet be back, but they've taken yet another step in the right direction. So I've been using that Tipper back for a long, long time.
You're getting fair mileage out with it, fairness to you. Yeah,
I do enjoy it though. It's great how it cracked, to be fair. Just a reminder, actually, before we get into it, we're brought to you by ourstore.ie, which of course is the official merchandise home for OurGame.ie. Also, we've got a couple of coaching clinics coming up. The next one is coming up on the morning of February 11th at 11 a.m. in Kilworth, Cork. That's the next hurling one, I should say. Colm Spillane, Eddie Brennan and Owen Brislan, who recently managed Mona Lean to an All-Ireland Club Intermediate title, they're going to be there. So you can either scan the QR code there or look for the link underneath the video. Also, we've got a football one coming up in Derryloughlin in Tyrone. That's Friday, February the 10th at 7:30. Conor Gormley and Conor Gilligan are going to be there, and we'll have one other mystery guest on the day. So again, tickets are available now. So
do you know what would be fair funny if when you get the mystery guest, if you had like a Mr. X over his head and all of a sudden there's like an unveiling or something like that. I don't know if you'd be able to get anyone to do that now, but it would be fair drama.
Conor Mack actually just jumping back to Ballyhale against Dunloy. He says Naas and Kilmacud had the runners from midfield and caused problems for Shamrocks. It's not BG style, so we didn't see that in the semi-final. It'll be interesting to see what Dunloy do. Like Nigel Elliott and Keelan Malloy are both very good runners with the ball. Dunloy just go out and try and play well, nothing to lose, and not concentrate the team they're playing or their invincibility. Realistically, says ML89, beat Dunloy. Our best Dunloy can hope for is a Burris versus Shamrocks type final. Stay in it without ever looking like winning or threatening to win it. Have taken some awful pastings in all their finals, except the one that you mentioned earlier where they drew. So Cork against Tipperary this weekend. I would say that both Pat Ryan and Liam Cahill would like to get a win here. They'd certainly like to have a decent performance. But if you're a new man in, a little bit of silverware, posing for the photo with the silverware afterwards for the photographers coming in, I think that's a nice little confidence booster.
There's a bit of crack to it as well, Shane. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just a bit of crack to it. It doesn't mean anything really in the grand scheme of things, but there's a bit of a laugh and whatever about it, and it's lads are kind of rubbing shoulders with each other. They're not going to go for, you know, a feed of pints after it and be celebrating filling the cup up or anything like that. Far from it. But there's a bit of crack to it. There's probably a bit of a novelty to it as well. And yeah, I don't see any cons to winning it. I'll put it that way. Both teams probably have, and you probably go through it a bit more about the numbers involved. Fitzgibbon, which has started and will be going fairly full bore next week as well. They both have a fair old juggling act. Now, Pat Ryan's probably a bit more than Liam Cattle, all the same.
Yeah. But Tipperary beat Clare by 222-20 last week. Well, yeah, about a week ago. And a really good performance. Like, from my point of view, I thought it was very encouraging. Some of the lads that stood out were, I thought, Brian O'Mara, and who, again, I think he's doing his final year of an undergraduate in UL, so he could be one of many players that's basically double jobbing at the moment, like we already mentioned with Tiernan Killeen. So in terms of the Tipperary spine, Breen is at number 3, very physically powerful player. Now you've Brian O'Mara, the same big size profile and a really good hurler. He's at 6. Garrod O'Connor must be 6'4". He was exceptional in Nina last week. The amount of ball he got onto, didn't do anything flashy, but the amount of ball he got onto, and he's a puck-out option, and he's a physical player. And I suppose in the full forward line as well, Sean Ryan. So all of these players, Tipperary would like to see a little bit more out of as well. Definitely Limerick had a very understrength team, no doubt about that. But you were at that game. So I've kind of mentioned a spine. Now, that's not to say that all of those will be playing for Tipperary this year when it comes to the championship. But I'm looking at stuff, real positives that were kind of different from how the team was last year, the last few years. What would you have taken from that Cork team that you could say, okay, I can see what Pat Ryan is doing here, and he's already identified a couple of things that might work in the summer?
Yeah, nothing was glaringly obvious to me, Shane, being honest with you. As I said to you, I thought they overplayed the ball at different stages, and Limerick punished them. They were trying to make maybe one pass too many. I thought the ball going in was too close to the attacker at times. Do you know the way you can kind of look at it and think, oh, that's a good ball into the forward, and then you're kind of thinking, well, it's not really, because it's not taking the forward away from the defender, if you get me. It's not into a bit more space. So I wouldn't have been blown away by a good few of the newcomers. As I said to you on Monday, I thought it was more of the older guard and the lads that you know and can generally depend on that excel. But it was one matchup that would be particularly tasty, I'd say, from a physicality point of view, would be, you know, size-wise, would be Brian Hayes, potentially a full forward, coming up against Michael Breen, a full-back. You have a newcomer to the Cork setup against, you know, a newcomer at full-back, albeit, like, according to you, he's like the best fullback for the last 5 years or whatever it is. And you've eventually had your say. And
that Tip produced underage, the best fullback that Tip produced underage.
You've sickened people into eventually giving your idea a chance or whatever.
So Liam Cahill's given me this one, knowing that it will buy him a bit of wiggle room with me for a few months if Tip underperforms.
But that's definitely going to be an interesting one. Brian O'Mara, who it looks like Liam Cattle is going with at 6 at the moment. You won't know until you probably see 3 or 4 league games. He's potentially probably coming up against Conor Lahan at 11, who was very good the last day. Hit 3 from play, was generally very good on the freeze. That's if O'Mara plays. He's obviously in the middle of Fitzgibbon at the moment. But you're asking me what I saw from Cork. But honestly, I'm not going to make up something that I didn't see. I didn't see a huge amount, and I'm hoping to see a lot more when I go to a league game or whatever, but there was nothing glaringly obvious. As I said, I thought Limerick let them have puck out, so I didn't see anything really new from a puck out point of view, or whether they were able to, like, anytime they went long, I didn't see a load of new ball winners or something like that. And here's one for you. A viewer had a pop at me the last day, I saw in the comments, for saying that a potential half forward line in championship of Luke Meade, Conor Lahan and Conor Cahalane. Like, is that beyond the realms of possibility that could at a given time in a game that could be a championship half forward line?
That could definitely happen. I don't think Cork could win in All Ireland with that, but I think it could definitely happen. And my worry for Cork is that instead of identifying options that are different to what they've had before, that have let them down before, that they're identifying the same thing. So, like Cormac Boasang, I'm saying this as a positive, looks a really good player, but he's not ultimately all that different from the type of inside forwards they've had before. Maybe he has a better hand on it, but they've had a lot of forwards that can get out in front and that they can score, but it's other areas of the field that they need to identify stuff. So, I mean, I'm not slating Boasang here. It's obviously coming, like, I'm complimenting him. He's very good.
You're
But, like,
talking about variety. You're talking
Yeah.
about variety. Is there something
and Brian
different?
Hayes, maybe Brian Hayes is that variety. Maybe he is. Actually, do you know what I was going to ask? Do you think Patrick Horgan has a place in the starting team this year? Obviously, he slipped out of the starting team last year, but when he came on against Galway, he probably shoved it up to a lot of people in that game. And then also there was one other player I was wondering, do you see Ronan Maher as a guaranteed starter for Tipperary this year?
I do, realistically, Shane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, where exactly? I'm not sure. I would be taking him away from the edge of the square if possible. I like him out.
He's only 27. He's only just gone 27.
I think he distributes fantastically well when distribution is in his head a bit more, maybe. Rather than, no, listen, I've no problem with lads shooting, but there's a time in a game when you're on the front foot to shoot, and then there's another time when you're 100 yards out, and it's as good of a striker as he is. It's a 1 in 3, 1 in 4, and 2 or 3 of those go wide, and it's kind of very demoralising. And I do think, like, based on what Cahill's underage pedigree and what we saw with Tipperary teams, I think it will be a lot more about, even if you're out around the middle of the field, I want the ball going into the inside forwards. We're more likely to score from 30 to 40 yards out. We'll only create a goal if the ball goes in around there. So I do think I think Ronan Maher be wing back, centre back, but with a bit of variety there, potentially even midfield, maybe. It'll be interesting to see. But I definitely do see him as a starter somewhere. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure where.
Yeah, and like, if you're to just sort of look at him on his own, he's obviously an excellent player. Would start on most teams, I suppose. But I'm just looking at the team and I'm wondering, okay, modern hurling and the way that Liam Cahill has obviously played with his underage teams and with Waterford in the last 3 seasons, he wants legs across the ground. Now, Ronan Maher is an excellent hurler, but he's not going to be a sprint champion, this year or any other year. And Noel McGrath's already been picked as the captain, so you'd imagine he's going to start somewhere. And Jason Ford isn't the most athletic, physical player in the world. And then I just wonder, can all 3 play? And who will and who won't? I mean, Jason Ford's been the free taker for a few years. I know Noel McGrath took them over at times last year. I mean, you probably aren't going to see all 3 of them start, are you? If you're to go along with what we've seen from Liam Cahill in recent times.
Yeah, no, I think we talked about this a bit before. I don't see it. And I think different lads will have different roles on different games, and some lads will be coming in and making an impact off the bench, and maybe won't be. There'll be some lads that were guaranteed starters before, maybe won't be guaranteed starters again. But there's such a fine balance. If Tip want goals and they want a load of athleticism, you have to have that balance within your team of lads that are literally going to be able to cover those acres. And the nature of it is now is that you need a decent few lads that are about 24, 25 that can cover that ground. Once you get in your 30s, it's just impossible to cover that same ground. Your role has to be altered. You just have to play a different type of role. And it's going to be fascinating to see where Noel McGrath, John McGrath, Seamus Callan, Jason Ford fit into that mix. All still savage hurlers with that can have a huge influence on any inter-county game, be it a league game or be it the biggest game of the season in an All-Ireland final. It's just what their role exactly is going to be in a given day is going to be so interesting.
Yeah, I want to go through some comments here. There's some good stuff. James Daly says, there's a lad that goes to our club games for years that always says, get ready for the puck out every time. The thing he says it's the same at our football games. He's also a tip man, Shane. It's gas. The amount of silverware and tip has dried up a bit. I'd say you're chomping at the bit to get some early 2023 success, Shane, says Flash. Time for Owen Connolly and Grode. Connolly, I say you mean Grode O'Connor. Andrew Ormond and Jerry Kelly to get game time. Winning doesn't matter at this stage for either. It's about building the panel. I hope Tip give Cork a good hide and keep them quiet for a while. Only for a few weeks, Mike. It sounds like we won't see you Monday morning, Shane, if Tip pull it off. Cork team was very experimental as well. UCC playing Fitz tonight, so a lot of lads might be missing on Sunday. Cork badly need a full back. Downey not the long-term answer. I mean, he could be up against Mark Keogh, his former UCC, or maybe they're both still UCC, but they could be up against each other. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the position for him either, as we said on Monday.
Don't think it's his preferred position by all accounts as well. Remember when they beat Limerick in 19, he was a rookie wing back. I think coming up against Mark Hegarty that day, I'm not sure. and was quite good that day. And he hasn't really played that much at wing back since. I know he played in that Can O'Brien final, I think, at wing back. The two Downies were either side, weren't they? When they played UCC, or they could have been playing for UCC actually.
Was he marking Tony Kelly, doing a man marking role in Tony Kelly a couple of years ago in a Munster match? And it
rings a bell.
Sort of match, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you're like, it was like the time Matt O'Hanlon was on Tony Kelly. Yes, you have a good marker, and then you're putting him on something that just really doesn't suit him.
Yeah. I think he was. I think that definitely rings a bell anyway. It's gas though. The more games that have happened in recent years, the more some games tend to merge into other games, and they're a lot easier to get mixed up since the round robin came in, I think.
Kieran 32, Shane, explain to Verney how you agreed with Owen Breslan that the Tip squad are more skillful hurlers than the current 3 in a row All-Ireland champions and 4 in a row Munster champions. That was on Tipcast. Sure, you agree with that? Oh, sorry, it was Kieran Connolly that River Power was referring to earlier rather than Gerard O'Connor. So, you'd be the first to say that Tipperary have the most skillful hurlers in the country, wouldn't you?
I definitely wouldn't be the first to say it anyway. They have very skillful hurlers. I wonder if you put the top...
But skill isn't the only thing these days. I mean, you have to have athleticism, game plan.
Yeah, but if you're talking about the top 3, just quickly while you have it here, give me the top 3 most skillful players on the Tip team.
Noel McGrath.
Okay.
Probably the most skillful hurler in Ireland can't even make the Tip panel. Bubbles O'Dwyer.
Okay.
Jason Ford would be pretty skillful.
Okay, there's 3. Okay, so we'll put that against Limerick's top 3. We'd say Keane Lynch, Gerard Hegarty,
Declan Hannon.
Declan Hannon, I was going to say, yeah. Declan Hannon, Aaron Gillan, in around there. So, like, do you know what I mean? Like there's a fair competition for skill between those 3. And the further you go down as well, I don't think there's a great difference, but definitely in recent years, it's definitely been seen that there's a big physical difference anyway. Whether there's a big skill difference or not, it doesn't. I don't think there's a big skill difference. It's just I don't know. I don't know if you've created this kind of idea of Tip being more skillful, and all they need is good S&C, and there's going to be All Ireland's kind of falling out of their pockets.
There will.
We'll see.
Emil89 says that 2012 minor Tip team that had Michael Breen on was class, but so many of them seemed to get injured. Mossy Hamill, Jack Peters, Stephen O'Brien, still got John McGrath, Maher and Heffernan. How about giving Verney the freedom of Burr? Would you be on for a civic reception?
Yeah, give me that. Give me a big golden key that opens some like mystic door or something like that.
Do you have a Mayor Joe Quimby down there?
Oh yeah, Vo Quimby. I was just saying, and you've somehow managed it again for a Munster League final. You've literally wangled about 15 minutes. My uncle was on to me yesterday. He says, "That's Stapleton. He does not only talk about Tip. We're talking about Munster League games, and he wants to chat about them. He chat about them for the full show, if he could."
Emil89 says that Peter Casey is well ahead of Hegarty in the skill department, but like that, it doesn't mean that he's better than him, which is a fair point. Kerry are also going to play Limerick in the Munster Hurling League this weekend. There's no real consequence to this match, as you were saying. And last year, Kerry had beaten Tip, but then they went out and were beaten fairly comprehensively by an experimental enough Limerick team.
Yeah, they were well beaten, like very well beaten. You know.
Yeah, Tipperary wouldn't hurl small spuds to ducks, says Kieran 32. By God, Kieran isn't holding back today, is he?
No, he's getting it in. He's dead right.
Yeah, but I'm looking for it as well. I want a bit of crack. So the Walsh Cup, you've been doing a bit of a piece heading into this weekend, Wexford against Kilkenny. Is it 12,000 tickets have been sold for a pre-season competition match?
It's nuts. They're looking at the guts of about 14 or 15. It's obviously the unveiling of the new lights in Wexford Park. I saw a video that Fate Harriers had up. The place looks class. And the lights are the same sort of lights as are in the Aviva Stadium. They're able to actually do a light show with the lights, if you get me, which is class. So they're not just floodlights. And I think the development started in like September and was given the rubber stamp the other night, or the green light. It's commissioned to have, night games or whatever, which is classic.
Opening it, yeah?
Let me tell you, the photo, if there is a big scissors or whatever, I always find it funny enough, like the amount of people that managed to get into that photo, because that photo will be shown for years upon years, and it's so important for your face to be there, particularly if you're of a political variety or you're involved in politics at all.
Shane Ross will find his way into it.
Yeah. So important to be there, but fair play to them. It only started in September. They have it done in, mid-January. They're going to unveil them for this game. I think there's a fireworks show. There's a first-year match, I think, kicking things off at 4 o'clock, and then the main event is at 6 o'clock. It's unprecedented that for the fourth biggest competition of the year, that the guts of 15,000 people would turn up. They've gone really hard at the promotion of it down in Wexford, and fair play to them. It's going to be a brilliant facility going forward. If you look at it, they probably could have held Ballygunner and Ballyhale. If they were playing the game for TV purposes, they could have played it at 6 o'clock that evening, shall we say, if it was under lights in Wexford Park. They were obviously caught with venues for that game because Thurles wasn't available. Now, it's down in the sunny southeast, so how many neutral games would be able to be played there? In realistic terms, I'm not so sure, because how many places converge on the sunny southeast has been equidistant to two different places. But that's kind of beside the point. I think the number one priority is hosting games, and this will help obviously with their local championships. And then number two, I think, is more to do with like entertainment and potential concerts. And obviously Ed Sheeran has a connection with Wexford and had the Wexford jersey on in Croker a good few years ago. And I think he even kind of half intimated that he would like to sponsor or get involved with Wexford GA. So I'm sure they'd love to host a concert down there at some stage. And like God only knows how many nights they'd sell out. And did Ed Sheeran, I think, where the Cork County Board coffers boosted something to the tune of about $1 million from the concerts down there. Like that's a lot. Like that's as you say, money talks, and that's a lot of money that can go to different places. So I'd imagine in time that they'll be working with people behind the scenes and trying to get a few concerts and different things. It opens up a lot of avenues for them in a lot of different areas.
How many times has the woman dragged you to Ed Sheeran concerts?
Never had Ed Sheeran.
What did she drag you to? What did you drag her to?
She kind of half dragged me to Gareth Brooks, but I didn't mind.
Well, that was class. That was class.
So, no.
I saw Ed Sheeran live once. That was I was a late comer, late taker of a ticket, but it was unmemorable.
Okay. What have we went to? The Furies, Christy Moore. They're not bad things to be dragged to now.
No. I've seen the Killers. I've seen. Do you know who's brilliant? The Cure.
Unless you started singing, which I would hope you didn't. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, to be honest with you. Yeah, but she got me tickets for the Furies for Christmas one year. I honestly, been honest with you, didn't know much about it. She liked them, and it was like kind of when Homer got Marge a bowling ball for Christmas or for whatever it was for her birthday, and she actually ended up going bowling after just to sicken him. Like she's bought me a couple of presents that are presents for her, really, in disguise.
Galway and it had Ed Sheeran in Pearse Stadium and actually made about 25% of what Cork made after it. And he used to busk on the streets there. What was I just thinking of there? Yeah, so there's a friend of mine, speaking of Christmas presents and getting it all wrong, friend of mine hurled with me in Coola, Niall Keane from Clare, of course, Ballyhale. He's married to a Kerry woman. A couple of years ago, during COVID, what did she buy him for Christmas? She bought him a jersey. Now, it was a jersey that was coming out, a commemorative jersey at the time. And she said, you know what? My Clare husband would love that. She bought him the Tipperary commemorative jersey. Can you imagine if you were from Clare and you're getting a Tipperary jersey?
Read the room.
Yeah. Oh, I had some laugh when I heard that now, I have to say. I thought that was very good. Wexford and Kilkenny, though, look, it's about both managers finding players, really, isn't it?
Basically, yeah. Wexford have to win to get through because they were beaten by Laois. Kilkenny only need a draw. I think both would probably welcome another game and a final on the eve of the league.
At Croke Park as well.
Yeah, and a chance to probably get a game into a few more frontliners that are going to be playing the week after in the league.
Yeah, Antrim are also playing against Galway. Galway, they're already through to the final. Antrim have lost to both Dublin and Westmeath. I saw the first game against Dublin. Without the Dunloy players and some other frontliners, still played quite well there. And Westmeath, that was 15 points to 13 that they lost. But look, competitive both games. Red card the second day didn't help them out. Westmeath will face Dublin. So Shane Clavin went off injured early enough against Antrim, and he was playing quite well at centre back. Dublin are obviously just going to continue to try and give a game time experience to some of these younger players, seeing as so many players are gone from last year. And then Offaly against Laois. You've been relatively happy with what you've seen from Offaly, albeit in defeat, and the time for moral victories is probably over.
Yeah, what I've seen so far is okay. Getting a victory over Laois, who they're going to meet in the McDonagh later in the year, even at this stage of the year, would be more than welcome. But a few new players that Offaly have kind of looked at. They've looked at Dara Maher in defence on the back of he was very good for Shinrone when they won the county title this year. Not that, like, outside of him, actually, I was going to say there's not that many Shinrone lads involved, but there is. The keeper is involved, Damon Cleary. There looks like they're going to persist with Jason Sampson at centre back, his brother Killian on the wing. Yeah, it's just, I think they probably think maybe they have enough up front with Oisin Kelly coming back and hopefully Owen Cattle coming back. If you had Jason Sampson, maybe Ben Keneally, man, and those kind of central berths in the defence, they maybe think they have a solid spine to work with. But yeah, no, I've been happy enough so far. From a Laois point of view, they obviously had a great win over Wexford first day out in Mount Rat. We're probably put to the sword relatively easy against Kilkenny last week, so both will just be looking to finish the competition on a bit of a high. They have 2 weeks then till Wexford are in Division 1B and Offaly are in Division 2A before those campaigns kick off.
Yeah, tip of too many lads interested in skills rather than working hard, says River Power, going in hard there. Mike Doyle says, Michael Shane, we have a fair idea of what Liam Cahill wants from his team. Will we see a different approach to Cork style of play to what we've seen over the last 10 years?
Can I just say something on that? You'd love to know what's going on behind the scenes in Tipperary, because look how different what we've seen in 2 games, particularly that second game, was to what we saw last year and even the year before. Like, that's quite amazing to see a team, a marked difference, looking completely different. You know, and they haven't.
It's surprised when you think of how Waterford changed very quickly in their first season under Cahill and Beavens.
No, it's not. But it's just amazing that I didn't see Cork against Kerry, and I wouldn't probably read too much into that. But I didn't see that much different in the Cork and Limerick game. But like, listen, I think Pat Ryan basically said they hadn't worked on tactics yet. That's kind of what he said. He said it was more physical and trying to get them up to that level, and that's the sort of thing that will be worked on in time. But it's clear in Tipperary that that's not the opposite, but
it's style of play.
Yeah.
Like, for me, Corkram is not only style. For me, Corkram is not only style of play that, and again, I've said it ad nauseum, but they did it again last weekend. Stick passes in the middle of the field into traffic. Like, that middle area was so congested in that match. You were there, so you would have seen it better than me. But like, teams now, it seems to be like 2 men up at the 14 and everyone else is crowded around the middle and there's a sweeper trying to cut out the space either way. That seems to be the way a lot of teams are going. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but like, you cannot stick pass in those middle areas, and Tipperary aren't. Now, there's room for the brick flick or the two-handed little flick with the hurley, but other than that, it's probably going to have to be hand passes through the middle. And if Cork don't do that, they're going to be in trouble again, and they're going to be physically out-muscled in games. And I think if they do really focus strongly on the hand pass and the running off the shoulder, they'll beat most teams.
Just an interesting one on that, right? So Pat Ryan said they hadn't really done anything tactically or whatever. I can remember a Burr manager coming in, and we had a meeting at the start of the year, about 2 months before we started training. And the main thing we talked about that night was tactically how we were going to play. And it was fully implemented, because it was clear from that meeting what we were actually going to do. And we implemented it throughout the year. But it's just funny how there's different strokes for different folks, obviously. Do you know what I mean? There's other things that they need to get right before they start really honing in on the style of play. But it's going to be interesting to see what sort of different things they go with this year, and particularly defensively, I think.
Yeah, and Pat Ryan is the man here, according to John O'Sullivan. That is all. And maybe he will be. And it's such early days that you can't read too much into anything. It's not like all of a sudden Tipper All-Ireland contenders. Davy Fitz once brought Bernard Dunn to speak to one of his teams, either Watford or Wexford. Someone said they could bring in Muhammad Ali to talk to him and they'd still win nothing. Wow, that's going in heavy.
Well, both won. Watford won a Munster title and Wexford won a Leinster title. But that was harsh.
Yeah, River Power says, give Verney a wrestling gold belt and he can walk around Burr like the king that he is.
I have one. Right. I have a couple in my home, River Power, just so you know. I have the big gold old WCW World Heavyweight title belt. And
you paid a pretty penny for them.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Actually, you'd laugh at me. Actually, listen, what's new? I got it for my 21st. Well, get something you want.
Christopher Conlon says Tip will come out of Munster. Correct, Christopher. Lads, can you call out the Waterford County Board an embarrassment? You'll have to expand on that, Popo. Ross Banville, 11 for Wexford, sharpshooter. Watch for him. That's from Yellow Belly TV, Bill Redmond. Okay, a couple of other things to read through. We've already mentioned Westmeath against Dublin. Offaly are against Laois, we mentioned that. Keogh Cup, Kildare against Down, Carlow Meath, Fitzgibbon, TUS Midwest against ATU Galway. Obviously, we've no idea who those teams actually are. I'm obviously joking there. UCC against Maynooth, Harty Cup semi-finals, Thurles CBS against Middleton, Cashel Community School against Arts Gullereesh, and then in the Barty Cup, which is the under-19B, High School Clonmel against Castle Troy and Charleville against Bandon.
I didn't realise it was called the Barty Cup.
Did you not?
No, that's brilliant. It kind of like it's the Harty Cup is the A competition and the B competition is Harty with a B on top of it.
Well, I mean that's the nickname. It's a colloquial term. It's not actually.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Okay, in the Sigerson this week, UL they lost to TUD. 173-11 was the final score, but TUD won 3-1 in penalties. UCC saw off ATU Galway 112-8 and SETU Carlow 2-9, MTU Kerry 0-12. We're going to talk about the All-Ireland Club final this weekend. So in the football, it's going to be Kilmacud Crokes up against Glen. Both teams were very good in their semi-finals for large spells. Crokes were holding Cairns O'Reilly's at arm's length until a late mini collapse, and Glen the same against Moy Cullen. So I spoke with players from both sides, including Shane Cunningham. So here's what he had to say. Obviously, the fitness of Paul Mannion is something that's been talked about a lot. Do you expect him to feature in any way, shape or form?
Whatever I tell you, you probably won't believe it. The honest answer is, I don't know. He's running out of time. It's probably touch and go at this stage. Whether he can play, we will give him every opportunity to play and do everything we can to play. It'll probably go right up to the wire to see if he can play any small part at all.
Yeah, very frustrating period for him between last year and this year. All the injuries.
Yeah, because I think prior to that, Paul was any bulletproof to injuries. He wouldn't have picked up too many injuries, despite all the football he played at inter-county and club level, and unfortunately he's probably picked up two serious injuries that have kind of hampered him quite significantly and hampered us quite significantly as well. And it's kind of given him the opportunity maybe to put the coaching hat on. And I've seen kind of another side of Paul Mannion and the experience that he's had of working in top level environments with Jim Gavin and Desi Farrell, and you can kind of see that coming out in when he's kind of coaching and kind of giving tactical advice to players and lads. So although it's hugely frustrating for us and him, there is benefits that he's kind of able to spread his time to other things that kind of reap rewards as well.
Yeah, they are one of the best organised teams on the field. I'm not sure how much of an impact Paul Mannion is having, because the team has been unbelievably well organised anyway. I also spoke to Conor Carville, so here's what he had to say. You did, where is it your grandfather has been involved in the club committee for 70 years. Can you just give the background of that, how old he is now and when he started out with the club?
Yeah, so my granddad, Mickey McKeefrey, he's 86 now, and I think his first year in the membership of the committee was when he was 14. So, and he would have been club chairman for a good number of years as well. And he's like a lot of men around Maharad. They just live, breathe, eat, sleep football. The club means everything to them, and they had so many years of not winning anything. It's really special for men like that, and I know they're really enjoying it. Although Granda probably wouldn't say much to me at times. He would be very much a man of that generation where he would try to keep feet in the ground, and but yeah, you can tell that it means the world to him, and it's nice.
There's a serious spine to that defence that the Glen have. Ryan Dugan's been really good. Maybe he'll pick up Shane Walsh. Also, I think Michael Warnock has been excellent. The way he tends to be in the right place at the right time to pick up possession, and rarely ever panics on the ball, always does the right thing with it. And then that midfield, Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley. There can't be a better club midfield than that. So that means Craig Diaz and Ben Shovlin are going to have to be on their game.
How efficient are the Glen, Shane? I think you have the two most efficient teams in the club game for quite some time. coming up against each other here. Kilmacud Crokes, as said we before, they don't need to put up big scores to win games. They don't concede. They concede very little, so they can just need to maximum. You know, if they're up near 60% of their scoring chances converted, they're gonna win most games because they concede very, very little. The 14 points they conceded last day was the most they'd conceded since the Naas game, and then I think you had to go back another good while before they conceded anything like that. So yeah, and I do think one of our viewers there said, you know, last year's final maybe wasn't the best on the eye. I think this should be maybe more aesthetically pleasing, and some of those matchups, particularly probably Glass and Diaz coming up against each other, and you see how David Moore dominated the midfield the last day against Cairns O'Reilly's, and you're kind of thinking, like, if the Glen are really able to get a foothold here, you know, they have a really good chance in this game. Obviously, Crokes are probably marginal enough favourites going into it. This is the only place they wanted to be after last February. The whole plan was to get back here, right some wrongs. As I said before, Robbie Brennan has the Kilcoo lads lifting the cup as the screensaver on his phone. They've talked about it regularly. I don't know, maybe were they was that hanging over them a bit in the semi-final because it was a poor semi-final performance by their standards this year, but they're back exactly where they want to be. I think Shane Cunningham was hardly able to keep a straight face there when he was talking to you about Paul Mannion. Like, to me, like, he has to feature in some capacity if he's doing it, you know, if he's decent bit of training under his belt, which he has 2 weeks at least since the last day, and was back doing a bit of running before the semi-final. I'd be surprised if he doesn't feature in some respect. And if it was a case of he was on the field and, you know, even at 75-80% of himself and able to be a foil even for Shane Walsh and a few of the other lads, Darren Mullen and that, it would be a massive one. To me, this is the sort of game that looks like it's going to... I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it went all the way to extra time again. I just can't find it very hard to see much spin between these two.
Yeah, one thing that stood out to me in the semi-final when Glen played Mike Cullen is a lot of their points were absolute pearlers. Now, they had several wides as well throughout the course of the game, but I don't think it's one of those things that you can survive on for an entirety of the game, is cracking points from distance. So they'll have to be working scores in. And to be fair to them, they were very good at bringing the ball up the field and manipulating it from side to side, much better than Mike Cullen were at that. So, like, in terms of how they bring the ball up and get it to Jack Doherty and Danny Tallon and so on and so forth, I thought they were very good at that. The thing with Crokes is they probably have that better spread of scorers, like Shane Cunningham, who we've mentioned. He might play inside. Shane Horn, Hugh Kenny scored 1-2 the last day. He got man of the match. Darren Mullen is understatedly brilliant in most games. And then, of course, that's before you get to Shane Walsh, who, of all the forwards, given the billing going into the semi-final, was probably relatively quiet. He had a great matchup with Cormac Coffey, who stuck with him really well throughout that game for the most part. So I kind of like wonder, is the main reason that Crokes are marginal favourites here because it's Crokes, because they've won All-Ireland titles before, because they've been in a final most recently, and because Glen probably just don't have that experience at this level of competition?
Yeah, I think so. And the fact that I think most people recognise that this has been a mission to get back there, and we've probably predicted all along probably that they would get back to here, and that they were All-Ireland favourites from, what are we talking, Dublin quarter-final, semi-final. Like, they would have been short favourites to win the All-Ireland. I don't know about you. I do kind of get the sense that things will be up the good few gears from that semi-final, and that's nearly a blip out of the system almost, because they've been performing to such high levels since then, and they demand such high levels from each other. So I would be predicting a big performance from them. And as I said, if Paul Mannion can play some sort of a part, that would be a huge bonus to them as well. When you're going through the scorers there, like, Shane Walsh will top score most days, but it is a different lad chipping in at 1-1 or 1-2 with 3 or 4 points. Like, there's so many lads can chip in from a Crokes point of view. That's not to say the Glen haven't got plenty of lads that can chip in. They definitely do. I think that potential matchup between maybe Ryan Dugan on Shane Walsh would be fascinating. Obviously, if he is able to, you know, negate him and keep him out of the game, you know, that would go a decent bit towards Glen getting their hands on the title. But as I said there, Crokes have lots of different ways that they can hurt you. And I don't have a feeling it's all been building towards this. And I actually don't think it was a bad thing that they underperformed in the semi-final. If anything, it was a wake-up call. And they definitely won't lack or want anything for effort going into this game. And the same thing with Ballyhale, just that little bit of muscle memory, knowing of the heartbreak of when you were in this position last, and it just it's hard to quantify what that can do for you on a given day. And they've been waiting for this one for 11 months now.
Yeah, and the two goalkeepers are important here as well. Obviously, Conor Ferris, and it wasn't all down to him, but the way it went, probably, that last goal for Kilcoo, and then even the last day towards the end of the game when he gave away a bit of a handy score and looked a little bit ruffled. Conor Bradley on the other side as well, the keeper is going to be huge. Emil89 says, Crokes good, but could be so much better with all the attacking football. People say you can't play like that, but didn't Corofin win 3 in a row only 2 years ago playing that way? Maybe I'm too idealistic. I couldn't help but go for Crokes because of all the players on the field, the X factor is Shane Walsh. And if he'd been fit as well, you'd probably be saying the next X factor was Paul Mannion. So maybe he'll feature also. What way are you going?
Yeah, I'd go probably Crokes to lift the cup, I'd say. Maybe not after normal time, maybe after extra time. And Shane, I just want to throw in a quick football quiz before we, because I know we have a couple of tiny little bits to finish off. Just going to pose 3 questions to the viewers and put your answers all in 3, and you write down your 3 as well. So We're looking at All-Ireland Senior Football Final top scorers, okay? Senior Football Final, this is the All-Ireland County. Yeah, inter-county, yeah. So the 2001 All-Ireland Senior Football Final, who was the top scorer? The 2015 All-Ireland Senior Football Final, who was the top scorer? And the 2010 All-Ireland Senior Football Final, who's the top scorer? So All-Ireland Senior Football Finals, top scorer in the 2021 final, the 2015 final, and the 2010 final.
Ooh. Okay, so 2001 was Galway winning.
No. You're not listening here. 2021.
Oh, 21, sorry.
2021, 2015, 2010. So they're all well in memory, Shaf. And it'd be interesting to see. If you're able to pull the 3 of them together. You definitely get 2 of them, I'd say.
Yeah, well, 2015, if I remember correctly, was Dublin 12, Kerry 9.
Yep.
Yeah. Tyrone against Kerry in 2010. No, sorry, that was Cork against Down. Okay, and is this top scorer from player overall?
Top scorer overall.
Okay. So let's see. In 2015, who would have been top scorer? Okay, I'm ready to give my answers.
Go for it.
Okay, 2021, Conor McKenna.
No.
Damn. 2015, Bernard Brogan.
No.
Damn. 2010, Daniel Goulding.
Yeah, I give you Daniel Goulding. The other 2, definitely one of them, it would be surprising. The 2 of them are probably surprising. I'll wait to see if somebody else comes in. We might fly through the McGrath Cup, and if any answers come in, we can come back to them.
Okay, so Cork against Limerick in the McGrath Cup final. Cork have a chance to, they're looking to do the double this weekend. And Ray Dempsey, this is a great start for Limerick under Ray Dempsey, so they're into a final right away. The O'Byrne Cup, the much maligned O'Byrne Cup at this stage, plenty of teams have shown that it's probably not the biggest thing for them this year. Dublin putting in probably a 3rd string team. Offaly have withdrawn. Obviously, Louth as well did it and fulfilled that fixture against Offaly. But Longford have really kind of shown that they want to go for this competition. They've had good results. They drew with Meath. They hammered Laois the first day out, wasn't it? And Paddy Christie obviously looking to get a title on the board here, which would be no harm for them. And the McKenna Cup final.
Just on that, Shane, quickly, I was chatting to Gary Rogers, who plays for Longford yesterday. Didn't talk to him too much about Longford. It was more about the miracle of Mullinacha for another piece. But just saying, finals are kind of a rarity for Longford, no matter what it is. So, they'll definitely be going gung-ho to win it. Then you have it from a Louth point of view. Mickey Hart always placed a lot of stock on winning McKenna Cups and setting the tone from the start of the year. They're I'd imagine they're a bit ahead of other years where they're going into Division 2 now, which is an absolute shark tank. They're going to be ready for Division 2. It's not going to be a matter of last year in Division 3 where there's a couple of bad results and then they turn it around. They're going to want to hit the ground running straight away. And the O'Byrne Cup would play into that. So you have 2 teams here that are going to be going gung-ho enough to win this, but I'd probably be favouring Louth to come out in the end.
And speaking of Longford and not winning things, they haven't gotten to a Leinster semi-final since it's 1986 or 88. which is some long time when you think about it. Derry against Tyrone. I'd say the McKenna Cup must be the most followed pre-season competition, or most seriously taken by the locals.
Oh, God. And this is going to be feisty enough, Shane. It was feisty when they met earlier on and they drew. And Rory Gallagher said the Tyrone lads were at the Derry game before that, scouting, basically. And he was like, I didn't know whether he was scouting for a McKenna Cup or scouting for down the line when they meet them. They're going to meet probably at some stage of the provincial campaign. But that'll be tasty enough. And if it was a hazard, I guess I'd say there'd probably be about 7,500 or 8,000 at it. So if you look at and I think there's a funny contrast in Leinster with 15,000 people turning up for a Walsh Cup round 3 game and the general kind of nearly apathy around the O'Byrne Cup when you look at it, with teams pulling out left, right and centre. But yeah, there'll be huge crowds at that game up in Ulster, and it'll be tasty enough, I'd say.
Yeah, Roscommon are going to meet Mayo in the FBD League final, so I'm sure Davy Burke would love to get a title there, no more than Kevin McStay as well, even if it's not the biggest deal in the world. Sigerson Cup, Queens are against DCU, ATU Sligo meets St Mary's Belfast, UCD will be taking on University of Galway, Maynooth, MTU Cork, Ulster University and ATU Donegal. I think that's about it for the show today. We haven't got anyone with the answers. Walsh, O'Connor and Cork corner forward, says A. Sully 180.
No. Okay, so 2010 you had it. Well, Cork corner forward was right. Daniel Goulding. Fairness, at least he didn't Google it anyway. Daniel Goulding was right for 2010. 2015 was James O'Donoghue with 3 points. And they were all from play. I always found it mystifying that he was taken off at the end of the game. The reigning footballer of the year was taken off and was their top scorer when Kerry were chasing the game. I always found that mystifying. And that'll show you how weird of a game that was as well, that he finished top scorer. Ryan O'Donoghue hit 8 points in the 2021 final, and that would catch an awful lot of people out because Killian O'Connor is the regular free taker, but he was obviously out.
Yeah, Mike Doyle got it wrong as well. He goes with Goulding, O'Connor and O'Shea as well. That was a tough one. Let's keep these quizzes going. I'm
here to ruin people's days.
Yeah, viewers out there, are you enjoying these? Let us know. Okay, we've got some coaching clinics coming up soon. Go and check the video description and you'll find out about those. One of them is in a hurling one in Cork and the other one is a football one in Tyrone. As well, we're brought to you by ourstore.ie. So that's it for the show and we'll be back again on Monday. Michael, take her handy.
Cheers, Shano.